Hi guys, Dr. Jessie from the Doctors of Physical Therapy here. We've been having a lot of questions from our different patients about back pain, specifically because a lot of you guys are at home more, and which means your kids are also at home. A lot of parents have been carrying their kids a lot more and coming to us and saying, hey, you know what, my back really hurts from carrying around my toddler all day. So I wanted to take some time and talk about some of the things we can do to work on some posture and some carrying techniques so that your little guy or little girl isn't hurting your back by the end of the day. Because we know already you're sitting more, you're at a desk that's not your office desk anymore, so we're already seeing some different factors that can contribute to that back pain. So let's talk about some things we can do to try and fix some of that and not have your back hurting by the end of the day. I do not have a toddler here, but what I do have is a 20-pound med ball, so I'm going to use that instead. What we're going to do is we're going to start at the hips and work our way up. I've got 3 different things I want to talk about that we see most commonly in people, not only with back pain, but when we put any sort of load on them, i.e. a kiddo, on their hip, making them carrying all day, and some of the things that oftentimes contribute to that. So, number 1, what we see a lot of is when you're contributing, or when you're holding your kid, we see a lot of this holding on the hip here, so you can use your other hand to do things and not just be hanging out right here all day long. Now the problem with this is we see you perch your kid on your hip. If I put this ball down, let's see what that looks like. You wouldn't stand like this all day, so why are you doing that once we start putting load on you? What happens is you can see my hip and my back right here. All these muscles that come down our hip and come down our back are now tightened and in this position. What that does is it relates to a lot of back pain right about in this area. Oftentimes people come to us and say, man, it's that low back right there. No matter what I do, no matter where I stretch, it's right here that's really bothering me. So let's talk about how to do some things to fix that. So instead of hanging out here with that hip all the way out, what we want to think about is making sure hips and shoulders are in line with each other. So that means bringing hips over to the side, so now you have what we call a box between shoulders and those hips. From here now, you've got your core engaged and you're able to actually hold on to this kiddo without having to use this hip as a prop. The second thing we see that goes right along with this posture is if I turn to the side, we start to see a lot of this butt sticking out as well too. And again, that's because now we've hiked this hip up here, and the only way we can support the rest of that hip is by hanging out here. A lot of times we see that in people with their back pain without even putting any sort of kids on them. We hang out in this position because our backs are not strong enough to support us, and we no longer use the abdominals to support us as well. So one thing I want you to try before you even have a kid or anything else loading you down is we're going to work on fixing what's called this anterior pelvic tilt. Our pelvis is tilted anteriorly. What that does is it increases stress and increases tightness all through here while elongating our abs. So what we want to think about doing is actually tucking that pelvis underneath us. One way you can think about that is if you have a belt on and someone were to pull your belt up, they'd actually pull your pelvis into this position. Just like we talked about shoulders and hips being in line when we're looking face to face, we also want to think about shoulders and hips being in line when we look at you from the side as well too. How we do that is by pulling pelvis underneath us. When you do that, you should feel those abdominals engage as well as your glutes. Now we've got your bigger muscles in your body and in your trunk stabilizing you so you can actually hold and support kids, load, weightlifting, all those sorts of things. We talk about the core a lot, obviously, as being our center for our power. When we hang out like this, what we've done is we've now stretched those abdominals and now we don't have any core or power. This translates directly to doing things like cycling, running, lifting, all those sorts of things. If we're hanging out in this position, we no longer have any power from here, and it's like shooting a cannonball out of a canoe. Now we have nowhere to go when we actually want to hold or lift something. So again, this position, pelvis under shoulders, becomes very important. What that looks like with a kiddo is now we've corrected not only for this shift, but also for this shift. You'll notice as I do this, the third thing that we often see if I go back into our kid holding position is you see the top of my back starts to round too. Gravity always does its thing, and when we're hanging out in this position trying to hold on to that load, we start to see a lot of this. Very exaggerated, but here's my point, is that what happens is we no longer are using all of our back muscles. We've started turning off here as we hang out in this position, and now the top of our back is also trying to hold on for us. So the big 3 things to remember is now that we've fixed hips, keeping hips underneath you and nice and tall, now we want to work on engaging all through here as well too to actually be able to hold our kid in this position instead of this position. What we do when we hang out here is we stretch all these muscles in our shoulders and our back. When our muscles are stretched, they can no longer contract appropriately or contract as strongly as they need to. So now we're not only hanging out in a stretched position, but now all our muscles are disadvantaged to try and actually help us support the kid we're holding. So what we want to do is make sure that we're holding our position here, and how you're going to do that is by thinking about shoulder blade position. So from here, if you think about the bottoms of your shoulder blades right here, and I can actually poke them out right here, you want to think about taking those shoulder blades and squeezing them down and together. That puts that chest and that upper back in a position in which you can actually hold and be in a position where you're not going to feel like that low back is starting to round and bothering you. Because oftentimes we see either people are coming in with that low back pain right through here, or they're coming in right through here saying, hey, this is really bothering me. I don't know what I've been doing. I haven't done anything different other than hold my kid for the last 3 hours while I'm trying to get work done. So oftentimes we don't realize even the positions we're putting ourselves in, the load and the stress we're putting on our body that it's not used to in the long term. So let's go over those 3 things again real quickly. First one, looking at ourselves from front to back. Perching this kiddo on our hip and hanging out in this position is going to tighten all the muscles on the side that we're actually holding our kid in. What we want to think about doing is positioning those hips underneath shoulders. What that does is it engages glutes, it engages back, and it helps you actually shoulder that load a little bit more. Now if we turn to the side, the other thing we want to think about is not hanging out in that what's called anterior pelvic tilt, that open position. Now we want to think about engaging core as well as glutes to make sure that shoulders again stay on top of hips, hips stand underneath shoulders. So now we've got an advantage position where all of our muscles in our core are starting to tighten up and actually help us support this load. Last thing we want to think about is we're working our way up the chain to the shoulders and the upper back. Hanging out here is going to cause a lot of that shoulder and back pain, and it's also going to work itself down the chain into this lower back as well too. So last thing we want to do is think about taking shoulder blades, squeezing them down and back. So now, I didn't do a very good job correcting here, did I? So now, we're hanging out in a position where, hey, you still don't want to hang out here all day, but it's not going to be a position in which it's going to cause a lot of your back pain. So try and think of just doing those 3 things next time you're holding your kid for a long period of time. A lot of times we don't even realize what we're doing that's causing some of that back pain. And also, since all of us are not able to go to the gym right now we've got a way that we're doing some resistance training with correct form and correct posture while you're still at home. So any questions, comments, let me know what you think, if this was helpful. If it wasn't, next time I'll try and find a squirming toddler to make it even a little bit more realistic. But hope this helps with some of that back pain, low back pain, upper back pain, whatever you're feeling at home while we're trying to make sure that we're working on adjusting a couple things for the new lives we're living right now. So like I said, shoot us a message. If you feel like that back pain really is bothering you, we're still here, we're still seeing visitors, and we're also seeing people via telehealth as well too. So any questions you have, shoot them our way. We'd love to help you out with that back pain and get you back to doing whatever it is you like to do. So thanks for listening, guys.